mantra is, I'd rather be hated for being who I am than be loved pretending to be someone that I'm not. 3 words I use to describe myself are resilient, tenacious, and kind. I was born on January 4th, 2000 in San Jose, California. I then moved to Texas at age 2.5 after my little sister Bree was born. I lived in Texas for about 8.5 years before moving to California after my parents got divorced. The TIPS, the leadership camp that my Aunt Natalie founded, made me grateful I didn't kill myself at 16. With everyone in this room, I'm sure there's someone or something that saves you from bad decisions and helps guide you. That's what TIPS was and still is for me. I think that I can come up here in front of all of you today and talk about my life because I've been through a lot. A few examples are that my biological father was not a very good person at all, to put it lightly. During the summer that I moved back to California, my parents got divorced. I was molested by a family member. And lastly, the first time I got depressed, I was 12, and that's honestly what my life-defining moments have been like. Because of TIPS, I can now see the true beauty of life, and because of TIPS, I can now see the true beauty of life, and I can also, it also helped me to solidify the commitment I made to putting my own happiness first. So first, I'll talk about who I was before TIPS. Then I will talk about who I was, or not who I was, but the experiences I had at TIPS. And then lastly, I'll talk about how TIPS continues to change my life in ways I never thought possible. I first agreed to go to TIPS because there was just this gut feeling that I needed to go, and I soon found out that gut feeling I had was absolutely right. Before TIPS, I was extremely shy and I lived my life for other people. Before TIPS, I was extremely shy and I lived my life for other people. I used to be selectively mute. It was so bad that at the time, I had my best friend named Sarah speak for me starting the first day I met her in kindergarten. Years of bullying, and due to the fact that I am disabled, it led me to trying to make other people happy first before myself in an attempt to avoid being judged. So in short, I lived my life for other people. I put other people's happiness before my own. I didn't have many friends, if I had any friends at all. And that was my reality until my Aunt Natalie invited me to come to TIPS. I was not prepared for how TIPS was about to turn my whole life and whole world utterly upside down. The experiences I had at TIPS made me realize that I was in a protective shell. TIPS forced me to be introspective, and work through past trauma. For example, one of the things we did for the first year at the camp, we got into pairs, and we were told to reveal something to our partner that we'd never told anyone before. I told my partner that I had been almost raped by the same person who molested me when I was 11. To finally be able to share that detail with someone was one of the most freeing things I've ever done. And I also remember at the end of the first year, when everyone was saying goodbye, I just remember taking a step back and realizing that if I had killed myself at 16, I never would have been able to have such a beautiful experience. So what I took from TIPS and what I learned is that not only a lot about who I truly am as a person, but it also taught me to work through things, whether they're big or small, in a good way. I truly believe, and after TIPS, I'm a completely different person. TIPS is the reason that I am an aspiring motivational speaker. And I truly believe that in every depressed person's life, there is a moment where there's a moment where it no longer becomes fighting the suicidal thoughts, but it is, you actually realize you want to live, and that's what TIPS did for me. After TIPS, I gained the confidence to make wonderful friends here at OCC, and last year, I spoke at Open Mic Night here on campus where I did a motivational speech. I never expected to be standing here in front of you today. I have no idea what my life would be like if it wasn't for TIPS. First I talked about who I was before TIPS, and then I talked about the experiences I had at TIPS, and lastly, I talked about how TIPS has made me into the person standing in front of you, or sitting in front of you today. And because of TIPS, I can now see not only the true beauty of life, but also of myself, and I will continue to live each day realizing the importance of putting my own joy first. This was a quote said by my friend Carly when I asked her about the difference she saw in me between last year at TIPS and this year at TIPS. She said, when I think back to our first year at TIPS, the change I saw in you was so profound, it gives me chills. When I think back to our first year at TIPS, when we were sitting on the grass, feeling victimized by our traumas, and practically in tears, it felt helpless and heavy. Now this year, you are your own, you are your hero of your own story, and you speak your truth and you're a voice for those that go unheard. And you have this sense of power about you now, like you can handle more than before and you've healed more than ever. Thank you.